Are Matt Boldy and or Marco Rossi on their way to help the Minnesota Wilds? We talk about that, the Winter Classic, and what Capo Kakinen needs to do to come away with a win against the Bruins on Thursday on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen every day. And just as a reminder, Locked on Wild is free and available to listen anywhere, anytime. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we react to some of the recent news for the Minnesota Wild as they gear up for their next game against the Boston Bruins. The possibility of a call-up for Matt Boldy and or Marco Rossi exists. Sounds like the Wild will be without Cam Talbot for at least the Bruins game. So we'll talk about what Capo Kakinen needs to do in order to help fill those shoes. We'll talk about Andrew Hammond getting the call up for the Wild as well. And we will recap the Winter Classic as Zach Zeman joins the show. He was at the Winter Classic. So we'll talk about that a little bit here today as well. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked on Wild, veteran content producer, and captain of the Locked on Wild podcast. Happy to have you along for a Tuesday edition of the show. And as mentioned, Zach Zeman is back to discuss plenty of topics here today. Zach, happy 2022. You were at the Winter Classic. Looks like you made it through without any major frostbite issues. So happy to have you along, as always, to discuss the Winter Classic and more. How's it going, man?
It's great. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy to be back on Locked on Wild. What is the first couple episodes of the year? So this is exciting. You know, if 2021 wasn't a great year for Locked on Wild, 2022 is going to break some records. I can guarantee it. Hop on right now if you haven't. This is going to be an insane year. I'm so happy to be here. Seth is just a beauty. This year is going to be insane. But I was at the Winter Classic. I was also at the 2016 Stadium Series game against the Blackhawks. So I'm going to kind of compare them. The Winter Classic blows it out of the water. They had a little fan fest in the Target Center, on the courtside level, so people could sit around and, stay warm before the game started, which I thought was awesome. The NHL killed it. They took out the whole court. Several fans would play games like shooting pucks and, target contests and stuff like that and photo ops. I thought it was a great setup. You walk out of the Target Center onto the road. And there was a concert, there was bars, there was so many fans mingling, getting ready, staying warm together. It was such a cool experience, especially in times of COVID when you really haven't seen this in a while. It's finally relieving to see everyone on the streets, everyone enjoying the state of hockey. There were a lot of Blues fans, not going to lie. It was either 80-20, I think, or 70-30% of fans were Blues. The Blues traveled well. I have a lot of Blues fans back at Missouri. None of them came, unfortunately, but they did travel well regardless. As well as the game went, the security lines were slow. Everyone was checking the hand warmers because they have like something that ticks off the metal detectors. So that took a while to get in. But once you're in there, it was, man, it felt like you weren't even close to a Twins game. That whole stadium is Twins, summer and sun and, great days. But once you got in there, there was snow on your seat. The atmosphere was incredible. Everyone was there. No one sat down. I can guarantee you that. I did not take a seat in my chair the entirety of the time I was there. Staying warm, jumping up and down, getting the feet cold or warm again because they were cold. It was just a great experience standing out there. There was something about it that made you be really thankful that this event went on. It was postponed last year. There was so much going into it, and finally attending it in person and seeing all the festivities and seeing the atmosphere was truly special, regardless of the score. I was tweeting during the game. I had made a fun pregame video. It was just a great atmosphere. It was different. It didn't feel like a Xcel Energy Center Wild game where you're struggling to find parking and you're walking in the miserable cold to get into the. It wasn't your normal game. I will say that it was kind of tough to watch the game. It was. That's what you can expect. I couldn't personally see any plays develop, stuff like that. Who has the puck? It was kind of like you heard the crowd erupt and you're like, oh, there's a goal, and something happened. And fireworks went off. Thomas Rhett was there. It was such a great experience. Like I said, regardless of the score, it was a miserable game. You're losing your 3 out of the 5 best players in your lineup. That can happen. But it was truly an atmosphere, an experience. And I'll keep touting about it. It's the greatest thing I've ever been to, greatest hockey event I've ever experienced. The people I was there with were amazing. I met a lot of cool people, cool Wild fans. It was just great. I'm going to keep going on, but it was just something truly special. I'm pretty sure everyone's heard a lot about it already. The coldest game in NHL history. Cool to be a part of it. So it was great.
Oh yeah. It's nice because, we talked about it a little bit yesterday with Alex Micheletti, but neither of us were there. So we're getting the insider report from somebody who was at the event itself. And so, it's fun to just hear kind of, because I saw just a slew of pictures throughout the day. They had the log cabin out in center field that the players came out of, which I think was just unbelievable touch. All the lights and everything catered towards Wild colors, ready to rock. And for this being probably I can't say second biggest, because Minneapolis, St. Paul have had the Super Bowl. They've had the Final Four. And so this maybe is the third biggest event that has been held at a Minnesota stadium here within the last 5-10 years.
Yeah. All those bigger events are at the US Bank Stadium. I think this is the biggest one in Target Field history. Sorry, Twins. Sorry you keep getting swept at home by the Yankees there. I went to that one too.
Thanks.
Anyway, yeah. Oh, another observation I had was, there's heaters up along the concourse where everyone kind of funneled to in the beginning, the pregame, the warm-ups and everything, because people are just like, oh gosh, we're in it for the long run. But when you're walking the concourse in between intermissions, the one thing that's different from the summer is, the shed, or all the kiosk making food for you, all the steam and smoke, and it's just filled the concourse. I know it was super smoky because it was so cold. And all the hot stuff was filling up the concourse, which is pretty funny. You're used to the hot summer days at Target Field, and none of that's happening. But it was just kind of funny just to see how much of a temperature difference at this venue it is. And it was just spectacular. I can't say enough great things about it. I was just so happy to be a part of the experience. It was great.
Did you see any celebrities up close? I know John Hamm was there, which was just ridiculous in a good way.
Apparently they're on the right field plaza area that they just kind of renovated recently. We try to move up in the Delta Sky because why not get a look and see what's happening up there. Couple private parties. I think there was obviously where all the celebrities funneled to, all the relatives and family members, in the warm right field section, like way past the foul pole.
Yeah.
There's a couple private parties up there. I did not personally see any celebrities, but I know there were a lot of people. I don't know if anyone knows who CM Punk is. He was there, just like the WWE guy. A lot of cool faces were there. All the Chicklets guys. It was just a great, everyone's coming here to watch this game. He kind of doesn't, it's just another Wild game. But no, this was a really spectacular event. Thank God it was a regular season loss. This was not a playoff game. Let's not get ahead of ourselves after this loss. We were missing a lot of people, but no, it was truly I almost wasn't even looking at the score. I was kind of just observing everything as the night went on, and you kind of forgot the game was on. I'm not even gonna lie. There was just a lot to look at, a lot to see, and the game was just one of them. So.
Well, it was an unbelievable time, and as you alluded to, and we talked about yesterday as well. Unfortunately, Wild couldn't get the win, but a lot of factors in play: rust, big time players being out, And so, as we said yesterday, and as I'm going to say again today, I really can't get super worked up about the fact that the Wild lost 6-4. Yes, now 5 losses in a row, but those 5 losses have occurred with, I think, 6 games postponed in between. So I just don't really know how panicked I can get until the schedule starts to get back on track. And yes, every loss that mounts during this time counts in the standings. But again, let's get back on track sometime here in the month of January. Spurgeon, Brodin, and Eriksson Ek are all going to return. And then at that point, once we get to where we're back on the normal slate of games, then we can say, okay, let's dive in. Let's see how this team's doing against the NHL competition. But there's too much going on. There's too many variables right now to where I can't put the panic meter up at this point.
Yeah.
There are people that are, and I'm not gonna give anybody grief for being concerned about what we've seen on the ice. It's just I gotta see this thing get back on track from a schedule standpoint before we go into the okay, we might have a problem here.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that take there. Everyone's thinking about, the injuries and the COVID issues, but let's talk about the postponements, man. I mean, you can't. I think the Wild fans are hoping for more postponements because their top players are injured or they're COVID. Of course you don't want to play without those guys. Of course those are your top guys. But the Winter Classic obviously can't get postponed. You're going to have to play games like that, and you're going to have to lose miserably in front of your fans. That's going to happen. You just can't press the panic button, especially when your top at least 3 of your 5 best players are sitting out. I keep saying that, but it is seriously something to consider. I'm actually kind of shocked when people say they're scared. I just personally haven't ever thought about it that far. Of course it's a skid. Every team's going to have a skid. And when your top 2 defensive players are out, of course your goalies are going to struggle. Of course you're going to find the lack of offensive push. In the first 10 minutes of the Winter Classic, obviously I couldn't pick out certain plays on who was, not skating well with the team, but you could very well tell that the momentum and the ice tilt was clearly for St. Louis. And it makes you think, why is this happening? Oh yeah, Brodin and Spurgeon are out, and we have call-ups like Addison, and we have more defensive or third-line defensive players getting first-line minutes. It's just a whole jungle and juggle of defensive players not playing their proper minutes. They're gonna have to step up, and of course it's gonna be not a fun show to watch, and that's just what's gonna happen. It's bound to happen. There's been injuries almost every year for every single team ever imaginable. This is the first big okay, let's start to look at this because we haven't lost this many in a row in a while, and I understand why people are scared, but it's kind of shocking that, because I know that these players are coming back, like you just said. There's not that much to worry about. There really is not. We're going to talk about the goalies later, but just as a general note, moving forward with a lot of these postponements, I mean, I guess the Wild fans have to be thankful for the postponements if they want their team to win, because it's going to be hard to win on a normal schedule. Yeah, let's just think about this as a normal schedule. You have a couple back-to-backs, you have overnight flights, skip a day, have practice, blah, 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 but you're constantly playing. And when you're consistently without Ek, Spurgeon, and Brodin during those times, yeah, that's a panic because they're out forever. It seems like forever, and you're playing several games in between. It's unlike right now where we've played 2 games in the last 2 weeks or something crazy like that, and there's not a lot to worry about.
Since December 14th, the Wild have played 3 games. So, but looking at the schedule, so let's assume this is actually a good talking point. So I don't want to spend the entire narrative of it.
Yeah.
But looking at the schedule right now, let's just assume that it's 2 weeks for Eriksson Ek and for Spurgeon from today. So that would get us to January 17th. That's 4 games. The opponents are Boston, Washington, Anaheim, and Colorado. So they will theoretically miss 4 games. But the level of opponent is pretty high during that stretch. So we'll keep an eye on that. That'll be something to monitor too with the schedule continuing to unfold. But let's dive into some interesting news from earlier today in that Dean Evison kind of tipping the hand of the Wild's plans for later here in the week, which makes it sound like reinforcements are on the way. We'll talk about that, plus more. More on the way on today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Got beard? Get Primal. You heard me right. Got beard? Get Primal. If you or someone you care about has a beard, it needs to get Primal. Maybe you're that guy who has never considered the benefits of treating your beard with product. Primal Origin Oils will stop the itch and make your beard look healthy and groomed. All products are free from harmful synthetic ingredients and with low impact on our planet. Primal Origin Oils makes balms, oils, and whipped butter that are renowned as the best feel in beard products available. All products are fair trade certified and handcrafted in the United States. The combo kits make a great gift, and if you're shopping for yourself, you will be glad you did. We know that every company claims to have the best, but Primal Origin Oils challenges you to compare their ingredients and the feel in beard to the other products you've used. We promise you will see and feel the difference. Remember, the code LOCKEDON gets you 20% off at primaloriginoils.com. Again, use the code LOCKEDON at checkout for 20% off at primaloriginoils.com. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen, your favorite show. Keeping up to date with the Minnesota Wild as much as humanly possible. Seth Topol hanging out with Zach Zeman, and Zach teased it before the pause in that it sounds as though the Minnesota Wild are poised to bring up at least one notable name to help out with some of the injuries that they are currently dealing with. It sounds as though we will get our first look this season at either Marco Rossi or Matt Boldy, or both. It was left completely open-ended. I think it was Michael Russo that asked the question, and Dean basically said, I can't answer it, but you're on the right track.
Yeah.
And so it seems like we're going to get at least one of those guys for Thursday's game. Maybe, hopefully both. Let's just start. Which one would you prefer if it was just one? Would you rather see Rossi or Boldy?
Let's throw it back to Game 6 against the Las Vegas Golden Knights, round 1 last year, where Matt Boldy took part in warmups. Woo! And his extra small breezers. I think Matt Boldy deserves to get his shot with the Wild. Especially in Boston where he went to college. I feel like that'd just be a great story. And I just think he deserves it. He's been with this team, kind of teasing at warmups in Game 6 of a playoff game. I think it's about time to bring him up. I think Rossi, if they were to bring both, awesome. But I think if there's one, I think Boldy deserves it just because, seniority, I guess. He's been there 1 year longer than Rossi. And I think Rossi can wait a little bit. But, hey, if both of them, perfect. I really don't have a preference, but I think Boldy deserves it. I think they're both stars. They've showed it. They're both probably mid-25, I think 25, 23, 28 points piece, something up there for Iowa. They're both showing that they're playing sensational hockey. Both of them deserve it. I think Boldy, deserves this one.
Now, so what we're looking at is Jordan Greenway was put on the COVID-19 protocol list. So his availability for Thursday's game is in question.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously you got to fill a forward spot. But hear me out on this. So let's assume Joel Eriksson-Ek is out. Jordan Greenway is out. What if the Wilds do something like this? Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello. Keep that line intact. Keep that line as it is. Fiala, Goudreau, and Boldy. And then, or You could go Fiala, Goudreau, Foligno. I think a wing would definitely make some sense.
Yeah.
It's just the lines are just so jumbled at this point with Joel Eriksson out that basically you got Hartman playing center, you got Goudreau playing center, then you probably have Rask maybe, or you have Sturm, or you have Bugstad. So that would be another option, is to have Victor Rask center the Kaprizov line and then go Foligno, Hartman, Boldy as another one of your line combos. I don't dislike it. I think what I would like to see. Fiala, Sturm, Boldy.
Yeah, I feel like Fiala and Boldy would work well together. I feel like those two are kind of they would find some mojo, I feel like, and I think that would be a cool line to see, no doubt.
Or maybe you go Kaprizov, Sturm, Fiala.
Ooh, I don't know. Different minutes on every line. I don't know. Someone's gonna have to play up. Sturm getting extra minutes, eh?
I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah.
Sturm's my guy. He's just got to kind of get rolling again here.
Yeah, he's got to get that ball rolling. Yeah.
But the nice thing about Matt Boldy is that he is aggressive and he's a confident playmaker. And on the Fiala line is a natural fit for him because we've talked about it a lot this year, and that has been kind of a point of issue for this team, is that Fiala is getting no help on that line. And so we can point to the fact that he's not scoring as much as he has in previous seasons, but like the further you dig into it, he's not getting anything offensively from anybody else on that line.
Yeah, he needs a little refresher. Get him someone new.
If you get a guy that is more offensively inclined as well to play on that line, and the Wild then go out and acquire the guy that I've been banging the drum for several weeks. Imagine that as a playoff line. You could roll out Kevin Fiala, Claude Giroux, and Matt Boldy. Spicy.
Yeah. Let's talk about the future real quick.
Spicy.
I like it. No,
but
now.
If they do go the Rossi route, I mean, that obviously puts less strain on Ryan Hartman. Still going to be probably the top center on this team, but then you could have Rossi. I think this gets to what is kind of the overall talking point with Boldy and Marco Rossi, at least for the rest of this season. When they're brought up, I think they're going to be better served on a line with Kevin Fiala than they are with anybody else, because he needs the help and they need somebody that can take a little pressure off of them while they're up. Now, long term, maybe the fit is better with Kaprizov for those guys. I wouldn't argue that at all.
No.
But I think we're seeing enough from Kirill Kaprizov with Matt Zuccarello and with Ryan Hartman that I think you can just leave that line alone.
Yeah, no, of course.
Get Kevin Fiala a little help.
Yeah.
And this team becomes more dangerous offensively.
Can you see one of them staying if they perform well?
I think so.
Yeah. If we see a boom in one of these lines, I bet they can change them during the game too, just to see, play a little experiment. If they see any line that is just insane that night against Boston, oh my goodness. I can definitely see them staying with this team. Someone's going to get sent back down. But these are assets that need to get, kind of implemented this year and test the water, and see what they're really capable of in the NHL level. And if they're not, then they're fine. They go back to Iowa. But obviously, we all think they are. They're all beasts down there. You see highlights of them almost every night, every game. Thanks, Spokesy. It's like, geez. but it's just like, yeah, they're all deserving, both of them. And I just think Boldy needs it a little more just because he's got teased a little in warm-ups and stuff. But I would like to see Boldy finally get a start here.
I like it. I like that thought. I did want to point something else out as well, because a friend of the show, Brett Marshall of the Sound the Foghorn podcast, mentioned this today. It's not even remotely close to the end of the world if Boldy comes up, if Rossi comes up.
Yeah.
They don't look the part right away. It happened that Adam Beckman, when he came up and played, looked the part, albeit on the fourth line for the Wild. Kalen Addison has looked the part when he has been inserted into the lineup. That doesn't always happen. That doesn't mean that the players are going to be not NHL quality or NHL caliber players. It takes some time.
Yeah.
Depending on the player and depending on the circumstances, with Rossi coming back from COVID and the COVID complications that he had, and Matt Boldy coming off of a pretty substantial lower body injury. So if they don't light it up right away, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah. These guys, although they went pretty high in the draft, they're not the number one pick. They're not expected to start right away. And, you talk about Alexis Lafreniere and Capo Caco and all those guys who got picked early in the recent years, and they're not putting up numbers, but they're expected to play that high caliber NHL level as of, you get Rossi, in the top 10, and you send them down there and say, hey, we don't need you right now. We have you. We don't need you because we aren't a number one pick team the year prior. We didn't deserve to get that pick. We didn't have a terrible year prior. We don't need your help right away because we had a great year the year before. We had a fine year, and you go develop and you take the time down there for yourself, and get acclimated, and then we can bring you up when you want to. And when we want you is right now. So, you've got time down there, but here's your time to shine. We didn't need you when we needed you. Like we're on a team that needed you, but now that you're here and it's very convenient, let's give you a shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I keep coming up with these points to throw in here. So
yeah, I got a lot to talk about. I'm not gonna lie.
Final one before we'll break, and then we'll talk about Capo Kakinen to finish, because obviously that's some other Wild news. And that Capo Kakinen is probably going to get the start on Thursday. Doesn't look like Cam Talbot will be available. But in terms of players out that will come back into the mix for the Wilds, call me crazy, but I think Jordan Greenway comes back and slides in with his normal line to get the Greenway, Foligno, Eriksson Ek trio, get them intact. But I think that third line, those pieces are totally interchangeable. And if Rossi and Boldy come up and they look great, keep them on that line and just go with it.
Just ride it. I'm so with you. I think a lot of people are with you on that. Those bottom six are just bring them up and down. Bring them up and down. You can almost do anything with them. And I'm so with you on that. Get the top six intact, and then we'll start to implement some Iowa Wild beauties back into this lineup. Let's go.
Love it. All right, let's talk about Capo Kakinen and what he can do to help the Wilds kind of calm the goalie situation. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild comes your way after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. And again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. We hope you stick with us all throughout 2022 with a lot of great content coming your way every single day here as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Seth Topol and Zach Zeman hanging out for a Tuesday episode of the show. And this will be just a short segment to close. Obviously, Cam Talbot suffered a lower body injury in the Winter Classic. Doesn't sound like he'll be available for Thursday's game against the Bruins. So it's going to be Capo Kakinen. Andrew Hammond was recalled by the Minnesota Wild to fill the backup role for this team. But, as we were talking about before we started recording, I know the goalie numbers look not great, but I think we need to take a look at who is missing from this lineup as to why some of these numbers have been inflated. Obviously, losing Brodin and Spurgeon both ahead of the Winter Classic is just a massive hole to try to dig out of. And just look at the minutes for other guys, on defense. I mean, you had Dumba playing 26, Goligoski playing 25. I know those are your two best defenders, so I don't have any problem with that. But you've got, Dmitry Kulikov played 20 minutes. John Merrill played 17. Jordy Ben played 13. Kalen Addison played 14. I know I've gone to bat a lot for Jordy Ben as a guy who has slipped into the lineup after a huge portion of just kind of sitting on the bench. But he is not Jared Spurgeon or Jonas Brodin. Dmitry Kulikov is not Jared Spurgeon or Jonas Brodin. John Merrill is not Jared Spurgeon or Jonas Brodin. And so I know you have to, on the ice at that given time, you have to rely on those guys to get it done. But that is a massive ask for your defense to not have those two guys and to be going up against some of these teams offensively that the Wild have played over the past few games. The Dallas Stars, one of the hottest teams in the NHL. They had won, I think, 8 in a row before a couple of losses when they played the Wild. And I know the Wild were one of the hottest teams in the NHL too. But those guys just do so much. I mean, we have the Edmonton Oilers game as film to document the Jonas.
Let's not forget these prior games. I mean, come on. We beat the Maple Leafs and Oilers. Of course you're going to follow the Stars and Blues and teams like that who are also great, nevertheless. It's just tough. It's obviously tough. It's a tough ask for every single defenseman with losing your two leaders on those 6 defensemen. Once you lose a third of your group, are you kidding me? You're going to have to step up and go up to the top lines. That's a huge ask, and it's going to be tough to fill. And of course, the goalies are going to be left, with a couple more scoring chances than they used to be facing. And that happened in the Winter Classic. Like I said, you couldn't really tell the plays that were happening in the Winter Classic. So the fans behind me heckling Talbot, it was, I guess, valid at the time. But once again, it's really not their fault when you step back and you realize that the 2 best defensemen in your lineup are gone.
It's like losing. It's like having a really good quarterback on an NFL team or having a really good safety on the back end for your defense, not having them there. And, you may say, well, we can get player X to fill in for them. But you lose all of that just cerebral thinking in being able to anticipate what the opponents are going to do, what your teammates are going to do, what position they're going to be in, where you need to be on a particular play. Trying to stop an odd man rush, trying to stop a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2. 2 of the best guys in the league at doing just those little things. That is not something that you can just replace with a body.
Yeah, very. You're just saying all of what I was about to say. You're just perfect. It's just perfect. You really just have to step back and think. It just takes a little bit of realizing what's ahead of the goalie, what the goalies depend on before they're supposed to make the save. And when they're not there, of course, it's going to be tough to make the save. And it's, it could be worse. I'm going to play this card. It could be worse. The Kraken could have taken Kakinen. We could have Andrew Hammond starting against Boston. It could be worse. But and when you're talking about Kakinen's last games, last time he played was actually in the 3rd period of the Winter Classic when the Wild, although it was like their best period because they had the goalie pulled for 8 minutes. Before that, Kakinen still faced a couple really nice scoring chances for the Blues. Because the defense is still not there as it pertains for the whole game, and I guess the last thing you could talk about is the last time they've played and what they've looked like before to the Boston game, and Kakinen looked fine. He didn't let in a goal at least, so we got that going for us. But yeah, it's not ideal. It's not ideal for your starting goalie to get injured here, and you don't know the extent of the injury until probably the day you're listening to this. But having Kaapo Kakinen playing in the most recent game before this Bruins game, with all the postponements as well, at least he got some game time. Like they got that going for him. But yeah, it's going to be tough. But I think Kakinen's fine. I've always been a Kakinen guy. Everyone's like, pick Kakinen to save. It's just like I just think having two solid goalies that you can depend on is a good deal. And I think Kakinen's there. I think people are just, it's not ideal, but it's not a lot to worry about right now. I guess we'll know the extent of the injury tomorrow, but I think we're fine still. I just, right now I think it's fine, but I guess we'll see what happens in the near future.
Exactly. It's a wait and see approach. We'll just take it day by day and hope that we have a little more info by the time the Wild play the Bruins again on Thursday.
Yeah, you'll see us back here once those games are done and what we can take from those games. So stay tuned. We'll be back to discuss what if we start worrying. If Talbot's injury is more severe than we think. Then we'll start to worry. But until then, it's fine. So.
Yeah, that's I think a good spot to leave it here for today. So thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen of the day. And now that you're finished with your first listen, make sure you hop over to Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Locked On Bets is free and available on all podcast platforms. Just like Locked On Wild, we are available everywhere and anytime you want to listen. We're also available on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We have unique content coming to all of those platforms here in 2022. So make sure you follow along to stay up to date on your favorite Minnesota hockey team, the Minnesota Wild. Because when a puck drops in the state of hockey, Locked On Wild has you covered every Monday through Friday with new episodes coming out as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.